He owns and operates the Pack-A-Day podcast that airs 365 days a year with over 12 million views on YouTube. A new adventure begins. It's time for the Pack-A-Day radio show with Andy Herman on 1250 AM and 1057 FM The Fan, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook and on the free Odyssey app.
It looked like a speed of light or a shooting star just coming out of the sky and closing ground fast, which, I mean, that's why he's here, right? I mean, that was really exciting to see. I think I definitely know that our crowd reacted the right way as well. I mean, I don't know if I've heard our crowd much louder than when they introduced him, and certainly on that sack.
Good morning, Packers Nation. Happy Wednesday. My name is Andy Herman. Welcome into the Pack-A-Day radio show. That was one Matt LaFleur on Micah Parsons and his impact in this past game and how fast he is, like a shooting star. That's courtesy of the Packers. We are live from the 1250 AM and 1057 FM The Fan studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Jason Hershorn, The Leap, going to be joining us at 8:20 a.m. today. Would love for you to join the show. Nicolay Law Fan talking text line 414-677-1250. Also, shoot us your comments over on YouTube as well. We've already got Pale Shelter saying he's so hyped about Watson getting an extension. It basically amounts to a fifth-year team option. Pale, that is exactly correct. And we're going to be talking about that in just a moment as well. And that's actually just a great place to start in general, because Goody has been on one, from drafting Matthew Golden in the first round to, finding these nice little moves like trading for Darian Kennard, who already paid dividends in his very first game, to obviously, I guess trading for Micah Parsons. That seemed pretty good. And now extending Christian Watson on a 1-year deal. It's a 1-year extension for Christian Watson. A little over $13 million is what we're looking at to keep him in Green Bay in 2026. There was always this idea that Christian Watson and Green Bay would be able to come to an agreement on some sort of 1-year extension that would make sense for both sides. The idea here is that for Green Bay, it makes sense to be able to try and get Christian Watson at a discounted rate. 13.6 may not seem like a discounted rate. I promise you it is a discounted rate. So to try to get him on a discounted rate and extend him for 1 year, we'll talk about the risk in it, but to have a big-time playmaker that there's just not many Christian Watson type of receivers that are out there that you can find, to get him back on that 1-year deal, on almost a prove-it deal. You probably don't want to sign him to any sort of long-term extension with the injury issues that he has had coming off an ACL and MCL. That's probably just a bridge too far to go anything longer than that. And for Christian Watson, it's an insurance policy, basically. He wants, after next year, Christian's hope is that he's going to come back this year, tear it up, come back next year on that 1-year deal in Green Bay, tear it up, and then he can go out and finally get that huge contract after that, which he would absolutely get if he comes back and even does like a 50 catch, 800 sort of yard season with good efficiency, good deep targets down the field. He'll get a big time contract with his play style and what he can bring to a team. So he's going to hope that he can get that big extension down the road from some team, whether it's Green Bay or somebody else. For Green Bay, again, it makes sense just to do 1 year so that they don't have to have that injury risk for anything longer than that. And it just makes a ton of sense for both sides. There's always the possibility that Christian Watson could have a unbelievable season once he comes back. I mean, the Packers and everyone is raving about how he looks already. If he goes out and tears it up the rest of the year, the 1-year 13 will look like, pocket change. There's also the chance that he has another Christian Watson-esque injury. And for Christian, he now locks in that $13 million just in case that were to happen. Again, sort of an insurance policy for him. And again, if it's Green Bay, it's just 1-year contract. It's not anything super exorbitant that is going to be, hurting you too ridiculously much. And even if he plays, Christian's probably if you really think about it, about a $1 million per year or $1 million per game player. If he plays about 13 games next year, you're probably getting your ROI on that investment for Christian. Of course, there's risk, right? He's been injured every season of his career. He is certainly coming off a torn ACL and MCL. That's always a little bit scary. He also is a perfect fit for this Matt LaFleur offense. You just cannot find 6'4", 200 plus pound, unbelievable blocking wide receivers who are able to win down the field with speed and immediacy that just scares the living crap out of opposing defenses, so much so that they're keeping a safety over the top of him and dragging defenders with him more often than not when he's down the field. And he's one of those players that is opening things up for everyone else, even when it's not showing up in the box score as well. So I think this, again, does make a lot of sense for both sides. I'm going to bring up some comparisons and why I'm even more excited about this in just a second, Tommy. But I want to bring in our super producer, Tommy Wirtz. Tommy, how are you feeling about this contract?
I like the deal, Andy, and I don't want to spoil any of your comparisons, but I will say, like, the Packers have done this before, right? I mean, that would also kind of hint at it. They've done it with people currently on this roster, this little 1-year extension, not really necessarily prove it, maybe isn't the right deal, but a risk, right? Where it's like, hey, you know, you don't want to get the long-term extension done, but you can absolutely earn one through this team, and we think it's a pretty fair deal. He was the 33rd pick, 34th pick?
34th, right around there.
Yeah,
33rd,
so
34th, right on there.
He's right next to the 5th-year option, right? Yep. Because he couldn't get one, and then you haven't seen a whole lot. When you do see him on the field, you do know that the Packers offense is completely different. He at least adds an element of surprise to defenses, and you have to know where he is on the field. And I think that the Green Bay Packers really, maybe that is their benefit, and that's what I saw in week 1, is that they don't really have that guy where you have to identify him on the field, right? And so, you know, Justin Jefferson on the Minnesota Vikings, it's like, where is he? Every single play, where is Justin Jefferson? Point him out. With Green Bay, like, they have just an everybody eats mentality of wide receivers that you don't necessarily know who's getting the ball, who the play is drawn up for. Christian Watson adds a little bit of that to the Green Bay Packers just because of his physical ability.
I'm right there with you. First of all, who is your comp from a current Packers standpoint, or like that they've done in the past?
Andy, this is the Jordan Love deal again.
Yeah, to an extent, yes.
Right.
Obviously, less injury related in that situation,
right,
but yes.
Hey,
we'll give you one more.
13.5, right? It's the exact same deal they did. One more year. Like, let's see what you got, and a little bit of security. So let's see what you have this year, and then maybe it works out next year. Now, I don't think that he's going to get a $200 million deal or $55 million a year, obviously, but I mean, it's literally the exact same number that they have done with Jordan Love.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And this is basically kind of that compromise, right around that 5th-year option, as you're pointing out. I know that number, right, is still striking, right? Like $13.5 million. The first thing we should notice is Pale Shelter also comments here. We do not know the details of the contract. So we don't know if some of this is incentive based. Again, usually when a contract is reported, there's usually a little bit of fluff kind of baked in there that sometimes doesn't come to fruition. So some of that could be the case. I'm also going to assume that they're probably putting some void years on that so that it's not all just on next year, because they're going to want some of that flexibility. So it's not all going to hit against the cap next year either, would be my guess there. But we do not have the full terms of the contract as of yet. So we'll have a little bit better feel of that when it comes to or when we actually get it. But here are some players that I want to point out. If you're thinking, oh my goodness, like 13 million kind of seems like a lot. For the LA Rams, Tutu Atwell, who is 5'9", 165, I might add, who last week had a total of 1 catch for 4 yards, who in the previous year had 42 catches for 562 yards and no touchdowns. And the year before that had 39 catches for 483 yards. He did have 3 touchdowns that year. And the year before that had 18 catches for 298 yards and 1 touchdown. Tutu Atwell, 1 year, $10 million this year. 1 year, $10 million for Tutu Atwell. You're paying a few million more to go from Tutu Atwell to Christian Watson. That is a ridiculous upgrade for a only $3 million difference. The next one I will bring up is Khalil Shakir. Now, Khalil Shakir is a good wide receiver. I like Khalil Shakir quite a bit. I believe same draft class, if I'm not mistaken. He got a 4-year contract extension with Buffalo worth up to $60.2 million, including $32 million guaranteed at signing. He's $15 million per year on a 4-year contract. I would also argue that Christian, now the caveat to all of this is quote unquote when healthy, right? But Christian is a much better wide receiver and more talented than Khalil Shakir. And he got a 4-year, $15 million per deal. You get Christian for 1 year, 13. And then here's the other one. All right. Now, this is a little bit of an interesting one. Jameson Williams, just last week.
Yep, this is the other one.
Signed a deal worth $27.6 million per year on a long-term contract extension. This is the career numbers for both of these players. Jameson Williams is 33 games, 83 catches, 1,396 yards, and 12 total touchdowns. Christian Watson's played 38 games, has 98 receptions, 1,653 receiving yards, and 17 total touchdowns. So in 5 more games, he has 15 more catches, 260 more yards, and 5 additional touchdowns. I don't even care if you want to make the argument, well, Jameson Williams is a better receiver. Okay, it's close, but if you want to make the argument Jameson Williams is just a better receiver, okay, I'll listen to the argument. He had 4 catches for 23 yards and was non-existent against Green Bay last week, but I'll listen to the argument. If you want to say, well, Jameson hasn't been, as injured, well, he has had some injury issues and he's had suspension issues, and he certainly can't block like Christian Watson on the outside. But if you want to say, like, hey, we trust the long-term upside and health of Jameson a little bit more, sure, I will absolutely agree with that too. But this is where the reward comes in of taking a little bit of that injury risk. You have some injury risk with Christian. He's been injured pretty much every year of his career, and he's coming off the ACL and MCL. But for basically the same sort of production and productivity, in fact, you could argue better production and productivity, you are giving him a half the size of the contract that Jameson Williams is getting. And that is the reward that you are putting, and not having to sign him to any sort of long-term extension. So again, I understand sometimes the sticker shock of like, oh, 13 million. Tommy, 4.5% of the salary cap. That's even if the full 13 million was on next year's salary cap, but 4.5% of the salary cap is what Christian Watson would cost. If you could say, like, hey, if for 4.5% of your team, do you want that to be Christian Watson? Yeah, absolutely. It's a no-brainer, no question about it whatsoever. So when you start looking at the comps, the other contracts around the league, the potential upside for Christian Watson, you understand the 1-year risk a little bit more. And I have a hard time being anything but, again, happy for Christian. I think the work that he's put in to come back at this point in time, and then also just, again, getting a potential player that, as you mentioned, changes this offense in a real legitimate way when he's out there. I'm more than willing to take this risk.
I think people struggle, Andy, to identify him as wide receiver number 1 for the team. And I think that the money also might think he is going to be targeted like a wide receiver 1 just by default because of what Green Bay has what they're working with right now, right? So I just don't know if anyone really wants to fall in love with the idea of wide receiver 1 Christian Watson when the availability hasn't really always been there. I also don't hate the contract. I know that it's just a 1-year deal, so it's really no harm, no foul. And why not keep him a part of the team that you have now tried to have, some weaponry on the outside. And like you said, his blocking is a much bigger deal. Green Bay loves blocking tight ends wide receivers on the outside. But I think that's where it might jump off the page is, like, okay, you want to compare him to a guy who everyone else got an extension, but he never plays either, and he's got legal issues for a reason why he's not playing and whatnot. Like, maybe not the best comparison to draw it to. You would love to see it as like, oh, it's a deal because look at how much Justin Jefferson was getting paid in week 5 or in year 5 versus Watson in year 5 type thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, and here's the thing too, right? Like, if you're thinking like, oh my goodness, like they're paying him like a top wide receiver. Well, Jamar Chase is getting $40 million per year.
Right,
Justin Jefferson is getting 35. CeeDee Lamb 34. Metcalf 33. Garrett Wilson 32.5. McLaurin 32. AJ Brown 32. Amon-Ra 30. Ayuk is getting 30. Tyreek Hill is getting 30. So I mean, the top of the receivers here again: Jameson Williams 27. DJ Moore 27. Let's see who else. Michael Pittman's getting 23. Cortland Sutton just got 23. Let's see. Stephon Diggs, injured Stephon Diggs, old Stephon Diggs just got 21 mil per year. He came off an ACL and MCL and is much older than Watson. Let's see. Christian Kirk got 18 mil per year. Deebo Samuel just got 17. So we're talking about the next class of wide receiver, that Khalil Shakir, Darnell Mooney, Rashad Bateman, Darius Slayton, Alan Lazard, Jacoby Myers, Tutu Atwell, De'Ami Brown, Josh Palmer. That's the tier of wide receiver that he's in. And if all those wide receivers that I just named, starting with Shakir, he is not only in that tier, he is better than that tier for me. And that's, again, you have to sort of a little bit understand kind of the going rate for this type of wide receiver to kind of make it make sense a little bit more. But yeah, again, this is a perfect deal for both sides.
I agree. And like I said, I look at it like the Jordan Love deal more than I look at it at any other wide receiver deal. And that's because I thought Jordan Love had like a 1-year, $20 million when I went and looked at it at Spot Track. it had said it was 1 year through 13.5 million on there.
Right.
So it was literally the exact same deal. And they probably pitched it the exact same way. Like, look at what we did for Jordan on that 1 year, 13 deal. Go ahead, do it, prove it. We'll get some value out of you, and you can prove your value either to us or someone else on that deal with a life-changing amount of money already to it.
All right, let's bring up the most obvious question here as you're listening to the Pack a Day radio show live from the 1250 AM and 105.7 FM, the Fan Studios, and powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook, which Abel Gonzalez here in YouTube asks so perfectly, what happens with Romeo? All right, a couple things here. The first thing I want to say is I don't like bringing up the fact of like, you chose Christian over Romeo, because like, yeah, you probably did. But I also, on the same token, are like, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. There are still ways in which Romeo could be back with this team. But I will say, I think it's exceedingly unlikely that now Romeo Doubs is back with the team in any way. I will start by saying I'm not surprised by that outcome in any way, shape, or form. I always thought that that was the most likely of scenarios. Justice Mosqueda has reported on a couple different occasions that Romeo Doubs has been involved in trade talks in the past, some teams calling about him more than the other way around, but that he has been involved in those talks. And again, you have to remember the suspension from a year ago and things like that. This was always probably going to be the exit point for Romeo. He's probably going to get a pretty big contract, and it's probably that similar 14 million-ish range next year per year. And you're going to probably get a fourth round comp pick for him in return. And I think that's probably what's going to happen with Romeo. If you look at wide receivers, and we talked about this in the past, Romeo is a good wide receiver. I really like Romeo being on this team. I don't want to see him traded away. I think he adds value to this team right now. In the NFL, your value is in playmaking at wide receiver. And I understand, I'm making an argument here after he just came up with a 40-plus yard catch this past week. But for the most part, Romeo Doubs is more that possession wide receiver. He's not super dynamic after the catch. He's not a great run blocker. He's a fine run blocker, but he's not a great run blocker. He's not somebody that usually is making a living with those deep passes down the field. He is a sort of traditional, solid possession wide receiver, which is good. Like you need those guys too. But Christian Watson can do all of that and can give you all of the other upside of run after the catch, winning down the field, etc., and is a better blocker as well. Romeo just doesn't have sort of that high-end playmaking ability more often than not than of what you're sort of looking for at that position. So I really liked what Romeo Doubs has given to this team. It's not a foregone conclusion that he's gone, but money's going to start getting tight. We know that with the Micah Parsons deal. And, they just extended Zach Tom. Now Christian Watson's in the room. You go into next year, Christian Watson now is at the top of that room from a market standpoint. You just drafted Matthew Golden and Savion Williams, and you still have Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks next year on rookie deals. And you're probably going to want to keep at least, I would assume, probably one of those two players as well. Not to mention, you probably draft another wide receiver to probably make up for losing probably one of Jaden Reed or Dontavian Wicks in the following year as well. And you want to keep churning that room. So you're probably already having Christian Watson, Matthew Golden, Savion Williams, Reed, Wicks, and probably I'm going to say somewhere between a third and a fifth round pick at wide receiver as well next year. That's your wide receiver room. And I don't think they're going to have the taste or the want to give, or the appetite, I guess I should say, to give Romeo Doubs kind of that bigger contract. So yeah, it is what it is. It's a bummer that, you have to be like, well, it's one or the other. I still think if there's like ways where Romeo Doubs tears it up this year, or if he's maybe willing to take a kind of a value contract in Green Bay, or he just becomes Jordan Love's favorite target and Jordan really vouches for him and is like, hey, that's my guy. There's still ways that this could potentially work. It's not a complete foregone conclusion, but it probably does more likely than not signal the end of the Romeo Doubs era in Green Bay after this season.
Do you think that impacts Jordan Love? Because it feels like that's kind of I don't think he necessarily has a guy, Andy, but if I was going to point out who I thought was his guy, I mean, it's Romeo Doubs, right?
I think that's probably true. It's to your point, and what I would say as well is we're not talking Aaron Jordy here. We're not talking Aaron Devontae here.
We're talking
Kumaro,
Yeah,
we're not talking anything like that. Let's not get too crazy. But he does seem to be the guy that he kind of goes to in some of those situations. But what I would probably say is like it probably needs to evolve into Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed, and Christian Watson anyway. Those are probably the guys that you want to become his go-to target. I go back to this. It was my theory for a long time, and I've actually had it sort of confirmed. When the Packers released Jordy Nelson, the injuries played a factor, the contract played a factor. One of the things that I always recognized when I was watching the tape the year before he got released with Jordy is Jordy was Aaron's go-to target. He would look his way first every single time. And Jordy didn't quite have it anymore. And Devontae Adams on the other side was winning on like every single play. And my theory at the time was like, I think they kind of cut him because as long as Jordy's on the team, he's always going to look to Jordy first. And he needs to start looking to Devontae first. And sure enough, Jordy's gone. And Devontae just explodes after that because Devontae is now his number one target, and Devontae was just way, way better than Jordy at that point in time. It's not an apples to apples comparison. I'm not saying it's the exact same here with Romeo Doubs in that same way, but I do think at some point you want your bigger playmakers to be the guy that you go to in those situations. And I think we're already going to start seeing that this year where guys like Reed and especially Golden become a little bit more, and Watson when he comes back, of those kind of go-to targets in some of those key situations. But we'll just have to kind of see how it plays out. And Romeo certainly could still be back at some point in time. It just depends on how things go kind of the remainder of this year and what those contract negotiations look like. We've got a lot more to get to. Football Talk on the Fan is presented by Paramount Plus. You can't count on much these days, but you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. Watch your local NFL game live every Sunday on CBS and Paramount Plus all season long. Visit ParamountPlus.com/NFL to get started today. We are 58 and sunny in Milwaukee, high of 74, low of 58 today. We're going to be back with Jason Hershorn. More with the Pack-A-Day Radio Show right after this. Welcome back to the Pack-A-Day Radio Show. We are live from the 1250 AM and 105.7 FM, the Fan Studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. My name is Andy Herman. Hope your day is going wonderful. Reminder that we've got the Mason Crosby Show coming up today from 9 to 11. Ty Dunn's going to be joining at 9:30 today. Joining us now on the Fan Guest Hotline, however, is powered by Gruber Law, is the one and only Jason Hershorn from The Leap. It's always a great day when we get to talk to Jason. You can find him on Blue Sky by JBH. Jason, how you doing, my friend?
Just trying to keep up with the rapid pace of Packers news, just like you, Andy.
Yeah, very much so. Something new every single day. Certainly in that big news yesterday was Christian Watson signing that contract extension. Let's start right there. What were your thoughts on this deal for Green Bay and for Christian?
So my first thought was not what this would mean for 2025. We already have an idea that Christian Watson is going to be back earlier than we originally expected, and that's going to have some effect in terms of what that receiver rotation is going to be. That's obviously already a discussion after week one. But you look to next year, you look to the Packers depth chart prior to this deal. You would have Matthew Golden under contract. You'd have Dontavian Williams under contract. You have the last year of Jaden Reed on Dontavian Wicks. And you say there's really only one guy in that group that has significant experience as like that boundary X receiver. Dontavian Williams certainly has the physical ability to be that, but we haven't seen it. It doesn't seem clear right now that they're going to deploy him in that way as a rookie because of all the time that he missed. And you say, oh, maybe that deal for Christian Watson was to preserve that additional option as that boundary X receiver for 2026. And then you consider the draft picks that they have after the Micah Parsons deal. They weren't likely going to draft wide receivers in the first round in back-to-back years, but that means that a position that they might have attacked in the first round next year would have been one that to spend a day 2 pick on instead, and you just push wide receiver further down the line. And this Watson deal basically takes the pressure off of that. They don't necessarily have to worry about getting a top 100 receiver in 2026 for that receiving core after, Doubs potentially leaves or Watson would have, absent this extension, potentially left. So I think this kind of future-proofs them in that sense. I don't know if this necessarily means that Watson is going to sign, like the second Jordan Love extension. I know you guys talked about that a little bit before the break. That could happen. I don't think that we're at that point yet. But this takes care of one of their bigger needs on the offense for next offseason.
Yeah, I think so too. And they just didn't have that exact type of wide receiver, like you mentioned, on the roster. And I do think it kind of rounds things out for next year with Watson, Reed, Wicks, Golden, Savion Williams. And then they probably can go a little bit later. Like we kind of talked about it last segment, somewhere maybe third, but probably more like 4th through 6th round at wide receiver, just to try to get another young piece in there as you potentially try to proof for maybe losing Watson, Wicks, and, Reed the following year, which will be a lot more interesting. So, I think this does give them a lot more flexibility going into next year with how they kind of want to build this team. And we'll see what the contract looks like. But my guess is there's probably going to be some void years and maybe some incentives on top of this that maybe make it a little bit more palatable for Green Bay in 2026 as well. We talked about, obviously, the news that is constantly coming out of Green Bay, and it's been just insanely fast paced and insane as of late from Micah Parsons to, we can't forget Darian Kennard in there as well. Cut down day. And then of course a big win. And now you get Christian Watson, and already tomorrow we've got Packers Commanders, which feels insane. I can't believe it's already Wednesday, but I want to pause and just take a breath because I still kind of want to digest this Packers Lions game. Jason, I'll let you go in any direction that you want. What were your kind of key takeaways and something that really is just kind of still marinating with you after that game?
So a single game, especially a week 1 game, is never going to provide true proof of concept for anything. Like, we just know week 1 can be misleading across the league. But to the degree that the Packers could check a lot of boxes on their big plans from this past offseason, it seems like they did it. The Micah Parsons thing obviously took up a lot of the oxygen, and for good reason. But one of the big changes they made on that defensive front was the coaching. They made the defensive line coach, that was supposed to be the big thing that was going to improve the performance. And even when Micah Parsons was not in there, I think you saw some evidence that plan would have worked. You think of the big, in the second half, when they nearly get the safety of Jared Goff, and they're basically able to keep the Lions just right up against that goal line. Micah Parsons was only in for one of those plays. That sack that Rashawn Gary had, that was with Micah Parsons off the field. So you can't really apply his impact to those plays. They were still able to beat what had been one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Even with the changes they underwent this offseason, the Detroit Lions, that is, that's still considered to be one of the better units. So you have to look at that part of it, that the Packers were so insistent that it wasn't really a personnel issue. It was a coaching issue with those defensive linemen, and that they would get more production with that change. At least early on, it appears as though that approach was the right one.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm going through and just finishing up the defensive film from this game as well. And I thought Devontae Wyatt looked better. I thought Colby Wooden looked better. I thought LVN looked better. Rashawn still looked menacing. Like it looked like a totally different defensive line out there. Even Carl Brooks, I thought, was very active in this game. I was very excited about that, how the defensive front played, especially against the run. There were some question marks in the interior of the defensive line of how they would hold up. And again, I know Detroit's maybe got a couple question marks in the interior as well. We'll see how they do in week 2 against Washington, but I could not be more pleased with what I saw from week 1 out of a defensive front who, but even again, not including Micah, obviously, there are questions about the other pieces with DeMarcus Covington coming in, and everyone's been glowing about what Covington's brought to the team. I think we saw that, and I think you bring up a great point there.
Yeah, and it's not even just in terms of the run defense. It's not even just about the defensive linemen. The linebacker play also very, very good. We expect at this point big things out of Edrin Cooper, and he obviously led the defense in tackles. But I thought Quay Walker had a very good game, an extension to some degree of that strong finish he had to 2024. They were both on the field for a lot, and they're going to be a big part of everything that team does against the run this season. And that run plan that the Packers put together looked really, really strong. And that would have been a good thing to say about any opponent, but it means more when it comes against a team like the Detroit Lions, given what they've done on the ground the past few years.
Well said. We're being joined by Jason Hershorn of The Leap. You can find him on social media by JBH over on Blue Sky. Let's talk about QB1 because this was a really interesting performance for Jordan. I thought for the vast majority of the game, he was fantastic, and really, especially early in the game, setting the pace and getting Green Bay, in those, scoring positions to start the game. That the beautiful throw to Tucker, obviously. There's also a couple misses, an RPO miss to Jaden Reed, a miss down the field to Tucker Kraft on a deep corner out early in the game, and then 2, interception-worthy plays. One that was dropped, one that was called back via penalty. How do you assess Jordan from this game?
In some sense, it was the tale of two halves, and I don't mean that as a qualitative assessment. I mean, really in the second half, the Packers throttled down on the Lions. They only attempted 6 passes. Technically, they attempted 7, but one of those was negated by a penalty. So 6 passes in the second half. So I don't think you just look at the numbers or even just the way that the Packers called the offense in the second half and get a fair assessment of Jordan Love. But the first half, I think, is where you saw him. And you pointed out what I would say was his worst play. It was that miss of Tucker Kraft. Like, that could have been a touchdown. That was easily his worst spray. And that's pretty much all I can say that was super negative about him. I know that he had the turnover-worthy play that did not end up getting caught by, I believe it was Anzalone of the Lions.
Yep.
But, there was other factors there, shorter pass, under pressure, like those factors need to be included. And you look at everything else. That's not just that first drive, but the first few drives with Jordan Love, he was able to basically put the ball wherever he wanted to, and they were bombing it. I mean, this was a game where they finished with an average depth of target over 11 yards. That's very, very high if you're unfamiliar with that stat. Like, most teams are hovering around 7 or 8. This is significantly more than that. They were really trying to take it to the Lions in that first half. And in that part of the game, when they asked Jordan Love to make some big throws, he did not hesitate, and he was very successful. He had the beautiful touchdown pass to Tucker Kraft, where he just puts it into that tight little window in the end zone. And you look at the rest of the thing, he was able to find the open receiver. He was able to even do a lot of stuff pre-snap that we've seen him do in the past, but it just means a little more in a big divisional game like they had last Sunday. He makes some adjustments to the protection. I think you saw on one of their big completions on that opening drive. Like, he really put together a strong game. So it was not perfect. It rarely is, but I don't think you can look at the final numbers and say, oh, Jordan Love had kind of a middling performance. Like, that was a really strong first game for a player who, because of that left thumb injury, did miss some meaningful practice time during training camp in the preseason.
I'm right there with you. I thought for the opening game and how he played in this one, I thought it was a winning performance. And I certainly think he set Green Bay up for success, especially like you said in the first half of this game. One of the things as we get ready for Packers Commanders, again, it's crazy that it's tomorrow already, is we're looking at this injury report, Jason, to kind of see coming off this Detroit game and transitioning to Washington, who's actually going to be able to play in this game. Players that did not participate, in yesterday's, again, it's a walkthrough only, but Aaron Banks, Brenton Cox, Bo Melton, Zach Tom, all did not participate in any capacity. You have a bunch of players who are potentially limited as well. What worries you about this injury report, or what are you maybe keeping an extra eye on as we get closer to this game?
It's not a secret. It's the offensive lineman. If Zach Tom can't play and or Aaron Banks can't play, the Packers do have the depth to cover that. We saw that in week 1. I mean, that was a whole reason that the Packers traded for Darian Kennard, was that they would have in total 7 offensive linemen that they felt comfortable putting in there. And if they have to go with an offensive line that includes, Jordan Morgan somewhere among the stars, whether that ends up being at guard or a tackle, and Darian Kennard taking the other spot, I think they're going to be okay. But one, it means that the next guy up, if there's an injury during that Thursday night game, which, it's a short week, that's certainly on the table for any team, it's going to be Anthony Belton, a guy who technically has now played in a real NFL game, but only saw a few snaps at the end of week 1. So if you get a little squirrely at that point, if there were to be additional injuries. Now, as we are speaking right now, we don't know if Zach Tom is going to play. Matt LaFleur did we'll give him up to game time. That usually means that player is not going to play. It's a little less clear about Aaron Banks just because there's been less discussion from the coaching staff about that. Right now, I'm kind of assuming that neither one of them end up suiting up, and it's going to mean that they're playing with Darian Kennard at one of the starting spots, someone who's only been in Green Bay for a few weeks. It's kind of the offensive line version of what happened last year with Malik Willis, and it's going to be Jordan Morgan playing as a starter somewhere. I think that's a good enough group, and they certainly have showed individually that they're good enough players. I mean, Kennard looked really good in the run game when he played this past week, and Morgan has shown some really good things in pass protection all throughout the preseason. But it's still going to be a big shakeup for that unit entering a very big game on a short week.
Yeah, we are totally in lockstep here, Jason. I am not going to lose a ton of sleep if it ends up being, Rasheed Walker, Jordan Morgan, Elton Jenkins, Sean Ryan, and Darian Kennard taking the field. I think that those 5 can certainly cut it, and I think they can be good enough to win this game. Certainly would love Zach Tom to be out there. That'd be great, but it is what it is. If he can't, I think you can survive this one. But to your point, Anthony Belton becomes probably the top backup. Donovan Jennings, your backup after that. And then you're probably going to have, you're going to call up either, Brant Banks or Dalton Cooper from the practice squad to be your 8th guy active. The depth gets very, very shaky on game day should anything else happen in that game. So going to be, imperative that the rest of the starting 5 that is out there, if those guys are out, does stay healthy in that game. Because again, I think anything after that, you start to get a whole heck of a lot more worried about. We're being joined by Jason Hershorn, The Leap. You can find him on social media at @ByJBH. Him and Peter, of course, do a phenomenal job with The Leap newsletter. If you're not checking that out, make sure to do so. It is definitely worth your time. What I want to ask you then finally, Jason, is what are you thinking about this Packers-Commanders game? What are you kind of keeping an eye on, and what do you think could potentially swing this game?
So besides the offensive line, I want to dip into that subject again. I am very curious to see, frankly, just what the Packers offense looks like in a full game, because in a way, the Packers did not have to play their full offense over the course of that week 1 matchup with the Lions. And I just wrote about this for The Leap. You go through that tape, and I don't want to spoil the article for anyone who's going to go check it out, but there are a few concepts that the Packers tend to call some like LaFleur staples that literally do not show up on tape during that game. And that's probably because they really only had to go through the full offense in the first half. And after that, they really just needed to kill clock, get the game over with. And I'm curious to see what those tweaks are that the Packers have in store for 2025. If you remember last week, Matt LaFleur, when he's asked about the Detroit coordinator changes, says, look, every team tweaks in the offseason. There are going to be some differences, and there would have been some differences even if Ben Johnson, for example, was still in Detroit. And I heard that. I was like, okay, well, what are your tweaks? And I'm very curious to see what those are. We have not seen them yet. We saw a bit of the Packers 2025 iteration in week 1. I don't think we saw the whole thing. And this might actually be the week where we get to see some of those tweaks, some of those things that LaFleur and his staff spent the offseason scheming up. That could be interesting. Those unscouted looks, I think, are going to come out this week against Washington.
And that could be a ton of fun and just kind of giving some unique wrinkles to this Washington team. I do think they were able to hold a few of those things back from this past week and hopefully have a few very fun wrinkles set up for Washington in what should be a very entertaining game on Thursday Night Football. You got a prediction for this one, Jason?
Well, even before the Micah Parsons trade, I thought that this is a game that the Packers were likely to win. I have some questions about Washington. It is a very old roster. It's not the way that most people think of it because Jaden Daniels just got there a year ago. He's a young quarterback. They have some other young star players, or at least high quality players on that team. The overall age of that roster is the highest in the NFL. And there's a lot of reasons to think that there could be some built-in regression, regardless of age, with that team off of last year. I think they had a lot of good breaks, and I think they can cover up some of those with improvement. But I don't know that they can cover up them all. So they got the win in week one. It's technically an undefeated team going into this Thursday night game. But I think that Washington roster is ripe for the taking. And now the Packers have all the things that we just discussed, and Micah Parsons with another, well, not full week, but another half-ish week of preparation in this Packers defense. So I do think it bodes well for Green Bay. And if they get off to a 2-0 start with a mini bye and then a upcoming slate that includes the Cleveland Browns and the post Micah Parsons Dallas Cowboys, they're pretty much in position to be not just a front runner in the NFC, but a front runner in the NFL. So there's a lot on the table for Green Bay this week. I think they're set up very well for it.
I do too. I can't wait for this one. I like Green Bay. Also, I don't know if I feel great about being as confident as I am about this one, but I do feel confident that they can pull off a win against Washington on Thursday Night Football. Should be a really fun one. Jason, I cannot thank you enough. You guys do incredible work over at The Leap. I'll let you plug anything on your way out.
Yeah, I would just suggest that people go check out that article we put out this morning. The Packers offense, we really think is going to show some new things as soon as this week. And there are certain hints that they put in there in week one that I think are going to show up throughout the season. So check that article out. TheLeap.football is where you can find us. And thank you for having me on, Andy.
Yeah, you bet. I think Peter and Jason do some of the best analytical work out there and finding some of those little nuances that you may not pick up on in real time, but you can look forward to moving forward. And that's the exact type of stuff that you're going to find over on The Leap pretty much every single day. Again, you guys do wonderful work. Jason, I cannot thank you enough for your time. We'll do it again real soon.
All right, take care, Andy.
You bet. That was the one and only Jason Hershorn joining us on the Fan Guest Hotline, powered by Gruber Law. One call, that's all. Again, make sure to follow him on social media at @ByJBH. This is the Pack a Day Radio Show. More right after this.
Back to Jacobs. Back to extending the record. Now 9 consecutive games with a touchdown. Josh Jacobs.
Welcome back to the Pack-A-Day Radio Show. A huge thank you to Jason Hershorn for joining us this past segment. That was the Josh Jacobs touchdown, courtesy of CBS. Josh Jacobs, I think, going to be one of those players that has a huge impact on this upcoming game in Washington. Also, a couple of reminders. We got the Mason Crosby Show with Mitch Nellis coming up next from 9 to 11. We got Tommy and Mason from 9 to 10, and then Mitch and Mason from 10 to 11. Also, an important PSA for our listeners. The Pack-A-Day Radio Show is also a podcast. You can find us anytime on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your favorite pods. Catch the full episode, listen by individual hour, or jump straight to the highlights. Just open up your favorite podcast app, search Pack-A-Day Radio Show, hit that follow button so you can get every minute of the show your way and on your time. Tommy, leadoff show today. Can you bring us a Brewers victory, please?
Yeah, I know. I'm feeling it, Andy. Like yesterday, I thought they had it. I thought they did. I thought they were gonna come through with that. Chad Patrick, I feel for him. Like the boys they don't get up for Chad Patrick for some reason. Like he has a better ERA and more strikeouts than Quintana. And now Patrick's 3-9 and Quintana's 11-6. Makes no sense, Andy. That's just baseball.
Yeah, that's baseball luck at its peak finest. Yeah, I personally, a little bit of a hot take here, Tommy. I liked it a lot better when the Brewers were just winning every game.
Yeah, I agree.
I would prefer that.
That was fun. They can still clinch a playoff berth today. A lot needs to happen, but they have to win. Reds, Dodgers, Giants all lose. Playoffs get clinched today. All
right. I'm less concerned about that. I just want to start seeing some consistent winning baseball again. Not super concerned as of yet. Nothing that I'm nervous about at this point. But some wins here and there are also nice.
Not terrible. Not a bad idea, Andy. We'll be live 12:30 to 1:30, right in the middle of middays with Thunder, and then Mitch will close you out until we get to Sparky at 2:00.
Yeah, it's gonna be epic, and I always love the work that you guys do on the leadoff show as well. It's definitely worth listening to before every single Brewer game to get you all set for it, and just kind of get you caught up on everything that's going on in MKE with the Brewers and all around baseball as well. All right, we still got a lot to kind of get to through the course of this week. Tommy, I can't believe that Washington and Green Bay is already tomorrow.
Right.
Just as we're going to obviously preview it tomorrow, but what's sort of on top of your mind for this game coming up?
The O-line health is 100% my biggest concern. It sounds like neither of those injuries, it kind of feels like if it was a Sunday game, they'd both be playing. With a Thursday turnaround, they probably, one of Aaron Banks or Zach Tom probably guaranteed to be out, and probably both of them. So I would love to see what they're going to do. But honestly, Andy, I can't wait to see what the Packers do with the mobility of Jaden Daniels now too, because I think that their defense is just so much faster, so much more athletic than any other defense in the NFL right now. And it's a good litmus test because on Monday, that was when both of those offenses seemed to be at their best, is when their quarterback could show off the mobility for JJ McCarthy or Caleb Williams during that game. And Jaden Daniels, I think, has better mobility than both of those quarterbacks. So if the Packers perform well against the Washington Commanders in that aspect, I think that it really is another good test to see how they could perform against the Vikings and the Bears. It always goes back to the NFC North, Andy.
I'm so glad you bring that up. That's a perfect transition there, Tommy. But before we get there, when you go through the film, and I'm just about finished with my entire tape study of this past week, I've just got a few plays left on defense. When you go through the film, you're not always sure if it's going to match what you saw and felt on game day. Sometimes like the immediate moments lie. Sometimes, you get a play that went your way that was maybe a little bit fluky and it changed the. When I went back and I've been watching this defense not only was hyper athletic, insanely energetic, but man, it came at you in waves. I mean, over and over. They're rallying to the football. And go watch the very first play. If anyone has access to the All-22, you can get it over at NFL Pro. It's pretty easy to get access to. If you have access to it, go watch the first play and just see the entire defense just literally come in a huge wave. I say the word blitz. I don't mean it in the traditional football form of blitz, but it's just just everyone's attacking from depth, from the second level, from the it is jarring to see the way that this defense is playing in all the best ways. I mean, Jeff Hafley, dude, there's nothing. Jeff freaking Hafley, the guy is unbelievable. And what he has got this defense doing and buying into, that like every play, it's a little bit, sort of Brewers-esque of every play. We're doing everything to play winning football. That's exactly what it is. It's all the little things. It's setting the edge the right way. It's holding up in the middle. It's rallying to the football. There's a blitz on the first drive of the game where I posted on Twitter. I think it's the second play of the game. It may be first play. It was second play of the game defensively. And Carrington Valentine comes off the edge on a blitz, and they throw to the other side. He goes all the way around the formation and sprints all the way to the opposite side of the field and is involved in the tackle. That was the perfect indicator of exactly what this was. We're going to get to our Potawatomi Sportsbook final thought of the day, though.
You got to do some smart thinking.
It's time for Andy Herman's final thought of the day.
What are you thinking?
Powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook.
What the hell were you thinking?
You're listening to the Pack-A-Day radio show on 1250 AM and 105.7 FM, The Fan.
Yeah, so the first one is just like we were talking about, the defense, legit, and it showed up even more on tape. But you brought up the NFC North, Tommy. It does feel like the Packers are destined right now to be the Kings in the NFC North. Long way to go. Nobody's crowning, but Vegas, and in this case, the Potawatomi Sportsbook, kind of are crowning the Green Bay Packers. Not exactly yet, but odds, Tommy. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. Green Bay now, the favorites in the division, minus 125. In second is the Minnesota Vikings at plus 290. The third is Detroit at plus 420. They went from neck and neck, both Green Bay and Detroit at plus 170, plus 180, right around there, to Green Bay being minus 125 and Detroit being plus 420 and third in the division in odds after that game. And then the Chicago Bears, the cute, cuddly Chicago Bears, plus 1,100 to win the division. By the way, you look at that Chicago schedule, good luck, Chicago Bears. You may very well need it. They've got 4 games that are like, all right, you could probably win, and then the rest is just like a murderer's row of teams that they play. So they could easily be well behind the 8 ball very, very quickly, and things could definitely spiral there if they don't turn this around very, very fast. So my final take of the day here is that the Packers have every right to go out, continue what they've been doing already, and ultimately win this NFC North. Of course, the goal is much, much higher than that, to win the NFC, to get to a Super Bowl and hopefully win that. But first things first, win the division. Make sure that you're playing that home game at minimum to open up. And right now, this division does feel like it is there for the taking for Green Bay. All right, we're going to be joined by Tommy, of course, and also Mason Crosby coming up in our next segment. We'll be right back right after this.